Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Shemi Shah, the blind city apostles GMS. I'm now coming at you with the video. Now this video here, now we know recently Donald Trump just pulled out of the INF treaty. I believe the INF treaty, INF stands for International Nuclear Force Treaty. And recently just pulled out of that with Russia. But back in 2001, you had something called the ABM treaty, the anti-ballistic missile treaty that George Bush pulled out of with Russia as well. Now this is back in 2001. This is a few months after. As you see, it says December 13th. So this is not too long after September 11th. This is December 13th, 2001. So this is not long after September 11th, 2001. Which we all know what happened that day. But I want to go into how this is not a new thing with America pulling out of treaties. This isn't nothing new. They have a history of this. It says, in a move that reflected what he said was a vastly different world, President Bush formally announced today that the United States was withdrawing from the anti-ballistic missile treaty that it signed with the Soviet Union in 1972. Russia termed the move a mistake but said it did not feel threatened by the decision. China, which was not a signatory to the pact, repeated its opposition to the missile defense system proposed by the Bush administration. In making his announcement, Mr. Bush declared at the White House Rose Garden, I have concluded the ABM treaty hinders our government's ways to protect our people from future terrorist or rogue state missile attacks. So this treaty won't protect us. Defending the American people is my highest priority as Commander-in-Chief, he added, and I cannot and will not allow the United States to remain in a treaty that prevents us from developing effective defenses. But yet they don't want Russia to develop effective defenses. Mr. Bush said he had given Russia formal notice of the move today. He added that he had forged common ground for a new strategic relationship with Moscow at a number of meetings with President Vladimir V. Putin, whom he referred to as my friend. The two leaders had agreed, President Bush said, that my decision to withdraw from the treaty will not in any way undermine our new relationship or Russian security. But in Moscow today, Mr. Putin, while saying that the decision was not unexpected, repeated in a nationwide television address Russia's oft-stated position that the treaty is a cornerstone of world security. He said the decision to withdraw was an erroneous one. As is well known, Russia and the U.S., unlike other nuclear powers, have for a long time possessed effective means to overcome missile defenses, he said. Therefore, I fully believe that the decision taken by the President of the United States does not pose a threat to the national security of the Russian Federation. Other Russian officials acknowledged that under the terms of the treaty, the United States had the right to withdraw after giving 6 months' notice, but the head of Russia's armed forces, General Anatoly Kvashnin, said the pullout will alter the nature of the international strategic balance and freeing the hands of a series of countries to restart an arms buildup. So pulling out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty, they're starting up another arms buildup. And Beijing and the United States will go and turn around and say, see, they're making weapons. But you're going to pull out of the treaty to cause that. In Beijing, China used muted language because now they say, oh, the United States pulled out of the ABM treaty? Now we got to start building our arms because that means the United States has to build their arms. So all it is just building up more missiles, more weapons for other nations. That's what other nations starting to do. Our thou as weak as we, right? That's in Isaiah. Matter of fact, let me get that. First, let me get the scripture. Psalms 55 and 20. He had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. Right, that's Esau. So the United States government was in a treaty with Russia, the ABM treaty, anti-ballistic missile treaty, that was supposed to prevent the buildup of anti-ballistic missiles. But they can go and pull out of the treaty, because why? He put forth his hands against such as be at peace with them. He had broken his covenant or his promise. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter. See, we feel like, didn't Bush say that? We feel like this is going to hinder us from being able to protect our country from terrorists. But war was in his heart. Deep down inside, he was really thinking about war the whole time because they want to build their arms, build their missiles for war. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawing swords. So his words were softer than oil, like softer than a sweet smelling oil. It was sweeter than a sweet smelling oil. Yet they were drawing swords. So his words were sweet, yet they were drawing swords, meaning what? Drawn for war. like when a person says something to you that sounds nice, but they really, but the intention of what's really being said is to undermine you. You know, like a person say, "Oh, come over here, we're gonna help you," and then when you come over there, they rob you. Their words were softer than oil, but they were drawing swords. And I said undermine, right? This is the book of Sirach, chapter 12, verse 10. It says, "Never trust thy enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so of his wickedness." Now, why does iron rust? Type it on Google. Why does iron rust? It says, iron oxide is formed when iron and oxygen react in the presence of water or moisture in the air. Iron oxide is very common because iron reacts easily with the oxygen in the air. See? And it says rust occurs when iron or its alloys such as steel corrode. Okay? So something rusts. Iron oxide occurs when iron and oxygen react in the presence of water or moisture in the air. That's why iron rusts. So rust is just another name for iron oxide. So when iron is exposed to oxygen and moisture for a long period of time, it eventually begins to what? To rust. And as you see here, rust on Wikipedia says, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Well, I'll read the whole thing. It says rust is another name for iron oxide, which occurs when iron or an alloy that contains iron like steel is exposed to oxygen and moisture for a long period of time. Over time, the oxygen combines with the metal at an atomic level, forming a new compound called an oxide and weakening the bonds of the metal itself. So it says, never trust thy enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so his wickedness. Iron is sure to rust, because iron is going to come in contact with oxygen. It's going to come in contact with water. So it's basically a definite that iron is going to rust. Okay? So is as it's definite that your enemy's wickedness is going to show. Just as iron is sure to rust. It's just as sure that your enemy's wickedness is going to eventually reveal itself. Though he humble himself and go crouching, right? He humbles himself and go crouching. Like when an animal crouches down, it's being humble. Okay? Like if you ever watched the Planet of the Apes movie, I think it was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes when they had Cobra and Caesar. When Caesar would stand up and look at Cobra, Cobra would like crouch down. That's like a sign of submissiveness. So though he humble himself and go crouching, he humbling himself, not being proud. He's crouching, acting all submissive, weak. Yet take good heed and beware of him, and thou should be unto him as if thou hast wiped the looking glass. Even though he's being humble and growing crouching, take good heed, pay very close attention to him, and beware of him. And you're gonna be and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped the looking glass. You wipe a mirror, which is a glass that you look in, you're gonna be able to see him clearly. You'll be able to see his true motives, and thou shalt know that his rust had not been altogether wiped away. You'll be able to see him clearly through that looking glass, like as if you were looking at a mirror. You'll be able to see him clearly for who he really is, and you'll understand that his rust had not been wiped away. In other words, you'll begin to understand that his wickedness is still within him. He just crouching himself and humbling himself to prepare weak, to not prepare weak, to appear weak, to appear as if he's trustworthy. Now let's go back. We are right here. It says in Beijing, China used muted language today to register its displeasure with the Bush announcement. We have taken note of the reports and express our concern over them. And Zhang Kui, the foreign ministry spokeswoman, China has been staunchly opposed to the pullout ever since the White House first floated the idea this year. Ari Fleischer, the White House spokesman, said the president had not ruled out making a new agreement or policy on arms reduction. Asked whether the Chinese government had said it would increase its nuclear arsenal in response to the American decision, Mr. Fletcher said those issues came up. See? All about war. How much more we got left? Okay. Not that much left. It says, Mr. Fletcher said Mr. Bush told the Chinese government that a nation like China that has the ability to launch many numbers of missiles as the United States could not be stopped. The missile defense system, Mr. Fletcher said, is not aimed at China. In his announcement, Mr. Bush said the recent terror threats underline the need for the United States to develop a missile defense. In 1972, ABM treaty was signed by the United States and the Soviet Union at a much different time, in a vastly different world, Mr. Bush said. One of the signatories, the Soviet Union, no longer exists, and neither does the hostility that once led both our countries to keep thousands of nuclear weapons on hair trigger on head trigger alert pointing at each other. The grim theory was that neither side would launch a nuclear attack because it knew the other would respond by destroying both. You have something called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction, MAD. You can look that up. Today, as the events of September 11th made all too clear. See, I mentioned it earlier, and I just got to this part of the article. I didn't even read this part of the article. The greatest threats to both our countries came not from each other or other big powers in the world, but from terrorists who strike without warning or rogue states who seek weapons of mass destruction, which 9/11 was all a setup. He added, we know that the terrorists and some of those who support them seek the ability to deliver death and destruction to our doorstep via missiles. We must have the freedom and flexibility to develop effective defenses against those attacks. Mr. Bush was accompanied at the announcement by Secretary of State Colin L. Powell, Defense Secretary Donald H. Rumsfeld, General Richard B. Myers, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Condoleezza Rice, his National Security Advisor. So with that, I hope you've learned something. I'm going to say shalom. Till next time. Shalom.